There are 3 rules to surviving in Daniel Moretti's world: never meet his eyes, never ask questions, and never make him notice you. I broke all 3 the day I started leaving early on Fridays. I should have known better. In the sprawling marble halls of the Moretti estate, invisibility was currency, and I'd spent 6 months perfecting the art of disappearing into the wallpaper. I polished silver until my reflection blurred. I scrubbed floors until my knees ached. I kept my head down and my mouth shut, just another shadow in a house built on darker ones. But every Friday at 4:47 p.m., I became reckless. The head housekeeper, Mrs. Chun, would purse her lips when I whispered my excuse, the same vague murmur about a family matter, urgent, unavoidable. She never pushed. Maybe she sensed the desperation leaking through my carefully practiced calm. Or maybe she just didn't care enough about one maid's comings and goings. Daniel Moretti, however, was a different story. I felt the shift 3 weeks ago, that prickling awareness that crawls up your spine when you're being watched. He stood in the doorway of his study, one hand resting against the frame, his dark eyes tracking my hurried movements as I fumbled with my coat. He said nothing. He never did. But the weight of his attention pressed against me like a physical thing, heavy and inescapable. Mafia bosses don't ignore patterns. They collect them like weapons. And that particular Friday, when I slipped through the iron gates with my heart hammering against my ribs, I didn't hear the purr of his black Mercedes rolling to life behind me. I didn't see him follow me through the winding streets of Brooklyn, past the gentrified brownstones into the part of the city where hope went to die. I didn't know that in 20 minutes, Daniel Moretti would peer through a cracked warehouse window and see the secret I'd bled myself dry to protect. The warehouse squatted at the end of Mercy Street like a corpse no one had bothered to bury. Broken windows stared out like empty eye sockets, and rust bloomed across the corrugated metal walls like a disease. Weeds pushed through cracks in the concrete, reclaiming what the city had abandoned years ago. I loved it. Not for what it was, but for what it gave us: privacy. Invisibility. A place where no one looked twice, because no one wanted to see. The side door groaned as I shouldered it open, my grocery bag heavy with supplies, bandages, pain cream, the protein bars Sophia pretended to hate but always finished. The interior was a cavern of shadows and forgotten industry, old machinery hulking in corners like sleeping giants. But in the center, where afternoon light slanted through the broken roof, I'd carved out something that almost looked like hope. Ellie. Sophia's voice echoed off the walls, bright and piercing as a bell. She sat in her wheelchair near the makeshift workspace I'd built from salvaged materials, a table cobbled together from pallets, foam mats spread across the concrete, and the parallel bars I'd welded myself from scrap metal, my hands blistered for weeks after. "I've been practicing my grip exercises," she announced proudly, holding up her small hands. "Look, I can hold the position for 20 seconds now." My throat tightened. 20 seconds. Such a small victory. Such an enormous one. That's my girl. I dropped the bag and crossed to her, kneeling so we were eye level. At 9 years old, Sophia still had that baby round face, freckles scattered across her nose like constellations. But her eyes, those were older. Aged by pain and disappointment and a courage that shamed me daily. "Did you bring them?" Her gaze darted to the bag, hungry with anticipation. "I brought them." I pulled out the braces carefully, as if they were made of glass instead of cheap metal and leather straps. They weren't pretty. Hell, they barely qualified as medical equipment. But they were ours, bought with money scraped from tips and skipped meals, adjusted and readjusted until my fingers bled. The doctors had been clear: Sophia would never walk again. The spinal damage from the fire was too severe, the nerves too compromised. They'd offered wheelchairs and pity and the kind of sad smiles that made me want to scream. I'd offered Sophia something better: refusal. "Okay, baby. Let's get you strapped in." The process was familiar now, almost meditative. I lifted her from the wheelchair, she weighed nothing, all bird bones and fragile hope, and carried her to the parallel bars. Her legs dangled uselessly, but she wrapped her arms around my neck with fierce determination. "I'm ready," she whispered against my shoulder. I set her down gently, supporting her weight as I fastened the braces around her calves, her thighs, connecting the straps with practiced efficiency. The metal was cold against her skin. She never complained. "How does that feel?" "Too tight." "It's perfect." Her hands gripped the parallel bars, knuckles white with effort. "Let's do this." Outside, pressed against the grimy glass of a window I'd forgotten to board up, Daniel Moretti stood perfectly still. I didn't know he was there. Didn't feel his eyes tracking every movement as I positioned myself behind Sophia, my hands hovering near her waist. Didn't sense the moment his world tilted, the careful architecture of his assumptions crumbling. All I knew was Sophia. "Remember," I said softly, falling into our routine. "Small steps. Don't try to go fast. Just feel the movement." I know. But her voice trembled with excitement and fear in equal measure. I'd researched everything I could about spinal injuries, about experimental treatments and physical therapy techniques. I'd watched YouTube videos until my eyes burned, taken notes in the margins of library books I couldn't afford to buy. The braces were supposed to provide structural support, to let her practice the motion of walking even if her body couldn't do it alone. The doctors said it wouldn't work. That I was giving her false hope. But hope, false or otherwise, was all we had left. "Okay," I breathed. "On 3. 1, 2. Sophia moved. It wasn't walking, not really. More like a controlled fall forward, her legs dragging in the braces, her entire body shaking with effort. But she moved. And when I caught her weight, when I helped her steady herself, when she looked up at me with tears streaming down her face. "I did it. Ellie, I did it." Her laughter was everything. Pure and bright and unbroken, filling the warehouse like music. I laughed too, or maybe I was crying, or maybe both at once. My baby sister, who'd been told she'd never stand again, was standing. Trembling and supported and barely upright, but standing. "Again," she demanded. "I want to go again." We practiced until sweat soaked through her shirt and my arms ached from supporting her weight. Each attempt was agony and triumph compressed into seconds. Each time she moved forward, even just inches, was a small miracle I stored against the darkness. Between attempts, she chattered about everything and nothing. A book she was reading. A bird she'd seen through the window that morning. Normal things. Beautiful, mundane, normal things that made me forget, just for a moment, that we were hiding in an abandoned warehouse because the world outside was too dangerous. "Do you think I'll be able to walk to school someday?" she asked during a water break, her voice small and careful. "Like, really walk? Without the chair?" I knelt beside her, brushing damp hair from her forehead. "I think you're going to do amazing things, sophomore things those doctors can't even imagine. Because I have you. Because you have you. I'm just helping." "You're my hero," she said simply, as if it were fact. As if the weight of that title didn't crush me every time she said it. Outside, Daniel Moretti felt something crack in his chest, something he'd thought long dead. He watched the maid who cleaned his floors cradle her sister like she was made of starlight. Watched her wipe away tears with hands he'd only ever seen wielding cleaning supplies. Watched her build hope from scraps and determination in a place the world had forgotten. She wasn't invisible anymore. She was incandescent. And he'd been so catastrophically blind. "One more time?" Sophia asked, her voice brightening. "Please? I feel like I'm getting stronger." "One more time," I agreed, helping her back to the bars. "Then we need to get you fed. I brought your favorite." The door groaned. Not the side door I'd entered through. The main entrance, the one I'd blocked with a rusted dumpster specifically to keep people out. My blood turned to ice. Sophia's eyes went wide, her grip tightening on the bars. "Ellie." "It's okay," I lied, moving between her and the door. Probably just the wind. But I knew better. The wind doesn't move dumpsters. The wind doesn't create shadows that tall, that broad, that precisely shaped like a man in an expensive suit. Daniel Moretti stepped from the darkness into the light, and the entire world held its breath. His face was unreadable, that carefully blank expression he wore like armor. But his eyes, something moved in those dark depths. Something I couldn't name and didn't dare hope for. Mr. Moretti. My voice came out strangled. I can explain. You should have told me, he said quietly. And everything I'd built, every secret, every careful lie, every desperate plan, shattered at my feet. The silence stretched like a blade between us. Sophia's breathing was the only sound, quick, frightened little gasps that made my protective instinct scream. I shifted, blocking her completely from Daniel's view, even though I knew it was useless. He'd already seen everything. Already knew. Elena. His voice cut through my panic, sharp and controlled. Step aside. No. The word escaped before I could stop it, before survival instinct could override love. Please, Mr. Moretti, she has nothing to do with, this isn't. I said step aside. I'm not going to hurt her. But men like him always said that right before they did. My legs trembled as I held my ground, weaponless and desperate. Behind me, Sophia's small voice wavered, Ellie, who is that? Nobody, baby. Just give me a minute. Daniel moved closer, and I saw it then, the crack in his armor. Not anger in his expression, but something rawer. Something that looked almost like pain. How long? He asked quietly. What? How long have you been doing this? Coming here every Friday, trying to make her walk again. The question wasn't what I expected. It disarmed me, made my carefully constructed lies dissolve on my tongue. 8 months, I whispered. Since I started working for you. And before that? Before that, I worked 3 other jobs trying to afford doctors who all said the same thing, nothing could be done. That I should accept it and move on. My voice cracked. Like she's something to just accept. Like she's not worth fighting for. Daniel's jaw tightened. He looked past me to where Sophia still gripped the parallel bars, her small frame shaking with exhaustion and fear. When his eyes returned to mine, something in them had shifted. Tell me what happened to her. It wasn't a request. But it wasn't a threat either. I glanced back at Sophia, who nodded almost imperceptibly. She understood, even at 9, that secrets had a cost. That sometimes truth was the only currency you had left. There was a fire, I began, the words tasting like ash. 3 years ago. Our apartment, I stopped, swallowed against the memory of smoke and screaming. Our father worked collections for some men. Small-time stuff, gambling debts mostly. But he made a mistake. Skimmed a little off the top, thought no one would notice. They always notice, Daniel said softly. Yeah. I laughed, bitter and broken. They came at night. We were sleeping. Dad tried to fight them off, but there were too many. I couldn't say it. Couldn't voice what they'd done to him while we hid in the closet. Sophia's hand clamped over my mouth to keep me quiet. They made it look like an accident. Faulty wiring, the fire marshal said. But I knew. We both knew. The names, Daniel pressed, his voice harder now. Who were the men? I was 17, I didn't know all the details. Elena. He stepped closer, invading my space with calculated precision. The names. Something in his tone made my spine lock. This wasn't curiosity. This was something darker, more personal. Carlyle, I whispered, pulling the name from memory. Anthony Carlyle was the one Dad worked for. And there was another name Dad mentioned once, when he thought we weren't listening. Vitali. He said Vitali was the real power, that Carlyle was just. Daniel's entire body went rigid. The temperature in the warehouse seemed to drop 10 degrees. His hands, which had been loose at his sides, curled into fists. And his eyes, God, his eyes went dead in a way that made my blood freeze. Luca Vitali, he said, and it wasn't a question. Yes. I think so. Why? Because Luca Vitali is the man who's been trying to kill me for the last 5 years. His voice was ice and fury compressed into words. Because Anthony Carlyle is his dog, and 3 years ago they were expanding into new territory, burning down anyone who got in their way. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. You're saying the fire that hurt Sophia was part of a larger war, one you got caught in the crossfire of. Daniel dragged a hand through his dark hair, disturbing its perfect styling. Jesus Christ. You've been working in my house for 8 months, and you never thought to mention this. Mention what? My voice rose, sharpened by fear and exhaustion. That some mob war destroyed my family? That I saved enough money for one decent interview outfit and prayed you wouldn't do a background check too deep? That I've been terrified every single day that someone would recognize my last name and finish what they started? You should have told me, he repeated, and this time there was something desperate in it. Why? The question burst out of me, raw and jagged. So you could fire me? Turn me over to whoever wanted us dead? Use us as leverage? I'm not stupid, Mr. Moretti. I know what you are. I know what men like you do to people like us. I protect what's mine. The words hung in the air between us, loaded with meanings I didn't dare examine. We're not yours, I said quietly. We're nobody. Nothing. Just collateral damage you happened to notice. Behind me, Sophia made a small sound. When I turned, tears tracked down her cheeks, but her chin was lifted in defiance that mirrored my own. We're not nothing, she said, her voice stronger than it had any right to be. Ellie saved me. She saves me every day. Daniel's expression cracked, just for a moment, vulnerability bleeding through before he locked it down again. He looked at Sophia like she was a ghost. Like she reminded him of something he'd lost and could never get back. I had a sister once, he said softly, the confession clearly costing him. Younger than me. She got sick, and I was too busy building my empire to save her. Too consumed with territory and revenge to notice she was dying until it was too late. The warehouse fell silent except for the wind whistling through broken windows. Every time I see you, he gestured at Sophia, then at me, his composure fracturing. Every time I see what you're fighting for, what you're willing to sacrifice, it reminds me that power means nothing if you lose the people who matter. What are you saying? I whispered. Daniel's eyes locked on mine, dark and determined and terrifying in their intensity. I'm saying you should have told me, he repeated, but this time the words carried a different weight. Because I could have helped. Because Vitali and Carlyle are my enemies too. And because, he stopped, jaw working as he fought for words. Because I don't let what's mine suffer alone. We're not. You are now. You are now. The words settled over us like a verdict, final and absolute. I wanted to argue, to push back against the assumption that Daniel Moretti could just claim us like property. But Sophia's hand found mine, her fingers cold and trembling, and the fight drained out of me. What does that mean? I asked carefully, searching his face for the trap I knew had to be there. What do you want from us? Want. Daniel's eyebrow lifted. I want you to stop killing yourself trying to fix the impossible with duct tape and desperation. It's not impossible. Elena. He cut me off with a look. Those braces are barely functional. The therapy you're doing here, without proper supervision, could cause more damage. And this place, he gestured at the crumbling warehouse, is a disaster waiting to happen. What if there's an emergency? What if she gets hurt and you can't get help in time? Each word was a hammer blow because they were all true. Every fear I'd swallowed down, every worst-case scenario I'd imagined at 3 in the morning came flooding back. "I'm doing the best I can with what I have," I said, hating how defensive I sounded. "I know you are." His voice softened, just slightly. "That's why I'm offering you better." "Better," I repeated flatly. "And what does better cost?" Something flickered across his face, hurt, maybe, or disappointment that I'd think so little of him. But he recovered quickly, that mask of control sliding back into place. "There's a clinic in Manhattan. Specializes in spinal injuries, cutting-edge treatments. The doctor who runs it owes me a favor." He paused, letting that sink in. "A big favor. One phone call and Sophia gets an appointment this week." My heart lurched. "How much?" "Already paid for." "Mr. Moretti." "Daniel." The correction was firm. "If we're doing this, you call me Daniel." "Doing what exactly?" I pressed, needing to understand. "Why would you help us? You barely know we exist." "I know you leave every Friday at 4:47. His eyes held mine. "I know you skip lunch 3 days a week and pretend you're not hungry. I know you work yourself to exhaustion and never complain. I know." He stopped, jaw tightening. "I know what it looks like when someone loves another person more than their own life." The raw honesty in his voice stole my breath. Behind me, Sophia whispered, "Ellie, I'm tired." The interruption broke the moment. I turned immediately, guilt flooding through me. She'd been standing in those braces for too long, her small body trembling with exhaustion. "I've got you, baby." I moved to unfasten the straps, but Daniel was faster. "Let me." I froze, every instinct screaming to put myself between him and my sister. But Sophia looked up at him with curious, unafraid eyes, and I found myself stepping aside. Daniel knelt beside her, his expensive suit trousers pressing into the dirty concrete without hesitation. His hands I'd seen sign death warrants, hands that had probably killed, moved with surprising gentleness as they worked the buckles. "These are hurting you," he said quietly, noticing the red marks on her skin. "Only a little," Sophia admitted. "But it's worth it." "Worth it?" He glanced up at her, something ancient and sad moving in his expression. "Why?" "Because I want to walk to school like normal kids. I want to run and play and not have everyone look at me like I'm broken." Her voice wavered. "I'm not broken. I'm just stuck. And Ellie's helping me get unstuck." Daniel's hands stilled on the last buckle. For a long moment, he just stared at this 9-year-old girl who spoke about impossible dreams like they were inevitable. "You remind me of someone," he said finally, his voice rough. "She was brave like you. Stubborn too." "Your sister?" Sophia asked with the blunt curiosity of children. "Yes." He finished removing the braces, setting them aside with a care that made my chest ache. "She would have liked you. I'm sorry she died." The simple, honest condolence seemed to undo something in Daniel. He sat back on his heels, and for just a moment, I saw past the Mafia boss to the man underneath, the one still haunted by the sister he couldn't save. "Me too," he whispered. Sophia reached out and patted his hand with her small one. "But you can help us. That's something, right? That's like making it better." Daniel looked at her hand on his, then up at me. The vulnerability in his eyes was devastating. "The clinic," I heard myself say. "What would we need to do?" His attention snapped back to me, sharp and focused. "I'll arrange transportation. You'll meet with Dr. Chun, no relation to your housekeeper, and she'll do a full evaluation. Imaging, therapy assessment, the works. And after that? After that, we make a plan. Real braces, proper equipment, maybe even surgery if she's a candidate." He stood, brushing off his knees. "Whatever it takes." I can't afford. I told you it's handled. I don't take charity, I said through clenched teeth. Good. Because this isn't charity. Daniel moved closer, invading my space with calculated intent. You work for me, Elena. You're under my protection whether you knew it or not. That means what threatens you threatens me. And right now, Sophia's condition is a vulnerability I won't tolerate. A vulnerability, I repeated, anger sparking. She's not a weakness to be managed. She's a child who deserves better than this. He gestured at the warehouse, at the makeshift therapy equipment, at the entire desperate situation. Let me give her that. Let me give both of you that. I wanted to refuse. Wanted to cling to my independence and pride. But Sophia's hopeful eyes were on me, and I knew, I'd always known, that my pride was worth nothing compared to her future. One appointment, I conceded. We see what the doctor says, and then we decide. Fair enough. Daniel pulled out his phone, already typing. I'll have a car pick you both up tomorrow at 10. And Elena? Yes. You're not coming back to the warehouse after this. It's not safe, and you don't need it anymore. You can't just. I already did. He met my eyes, and there was steel beneath the softness. You're under my protection now. That means you follow my rules. I should have been angry. Should have fought against being controlled, against losing what little autonomy I'd carved out. But as I looked at Sophia, exhausted, hopeful, still gripping Daniel's hand like he was an anchor, I realized something terrifying. I didn't see a monster anymore. I saw a man who'd lost someone he loved and was desperate to save what he'd found in us. A man whose power could be a shield instead of a sword. I saw someone almost human. And that was infinitely more dangerous than his cruelty ever could have been. The appointment with Dr. Chun changed everything. Sophia was a candidate for surgery, experimental, risky, but possible. The braces Daniel ordered from Italy were already being custom-fitted. For the first time in 3 years, the word hope didn't taste like a lie in my mouth. I should have known better. Hope was a luxury people like us couldn't afford. A weakness that painted targets on our backs. It was Friday evening, 6 days after Daniel's promise of protection, when I returned to the warehouse one last time. I told him I was done with the place, but there were still things I needed to retrieve: Sophia's medical records, the notebook where I'd tracked every exercise and measurement, the photo of our parents I'd hidden in a coffee can behind the parallel bars. The dumpster I'd used to block the main entrance was moved. My stomach dropped. I stood on the cracked pavement, grocery bag hanging forgotten from my hand, staring at the gap where 2 tons of metal had been effortlessly shoved aside. No, I whispered. No, no, no. I ran. The side door hung open, twisted off its hinges. Inside, the warehouse was destruction incarnate. The parallel bars I'd spent weeks building lay crumpled like discarded toys. The foam mats were slashed open, white stuffing spilling across concrete. The table, my salvaged, carefully constructed table, was kindling. And the braces. God, the braces. They lay in pieces near the center of the space, metal twisted and leather straps cut, destroyed with methodical precision. Someone had taken their time. Had enjoyed it. My legs gave out. I knelt in the wreckage, picking up pieces of bent metal, and the sound that escaped me was animal, raw and broken and drowning in grief. These weren't just braces. They were months of saved money, of sacrificed meals, of hope measured in leather and steel. They were Sophia's chance, and someone had crushed them like they were nothing. That's when I saw the message. Carved into the concrete with something sharp, the letters deep and deliberate. You belong to US. Ice flooded my veins. My hands shook as I traced the words, feeling the grooves, the threat embedded in stone. This wasn't random. This wasn't coincidence. They'd found us. After 3 years of hiding, of running, of pretending we didn't exist, Carlyle's men had found us. No. I stood, backing away from the message. Not again. Not Sophia. Not. My phone. I needed my phone. Needed to call Daniel. Needed to get to Sophia. Needed to. A sound stopped me. Soft, whimpering. Coming from the far corner of the warehouse, where shadows pooled thick and dark. Hello? My voice cracked. Is someone? A woman stumbled into the light. Young, maybe early 20s, her face bruised and bloody. She clutched her ribs, each breath a labored wheeze. Run, she gasped. They're coming back, wanted you to see. She collapsed. I caught her, lowering us both to the ground. Blood soaked through her shirt, too much blood, and her eyes were starting to glaze. Who did this? I demanded, even though I already knew. Who sent you? Carlisle, she choked out. Said to tell you, debts don't die, with fathers. Stay with me. I pressed my hands against the worst of the bleeding, my phone trapped under my knee. I'm calling for help. Too late. She grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. He knows about the girl, about Moretti, said you chose the wrong side. Her grip went slack. No, 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 I shook her, desperate and useless. Please stay awake, I can. But she was already gone, her eyes staring at nothing, and I was kneeling in her blood with a message carved in stone and the certainty that Sophia was next. I scrambled for my phone, fingers slipping on the screen, leaving red smears as I dialed Daniel's number. He answered on the first ring. Elena. They found us. The words tumbled out, fractured and panicked. The warehouse, they destroyed everything, there's a woman, she's dead, they said Sophia. Where are you? His voice was ice and murder compressed into 3 words. The warehouse, but Daniel, Sophia's at home alone, what if they? I already have men at your apartment. She's safe. A pause, then, are you hurt? No, but. Stay there. Don't move. I'm 5 minutes out. The line went dead. I sat in the ruins of my hope, cradling a dead woman I didn't know, and waited for the monster I'd started to trust. He arrived in 4 minutes. The warehouse door exploded inward, not opened, but kicked with such force the remaining hinges shattered. Daniel strode through the wreckage, flanked by 2 men in dark suits, and the expression on his face was apocalyptic. His eyes found me first, did a rapid assessment for injuries. Then they landed on the dead woman. The destroyed braces. The message carved in concrete. Something in him went absolutely still. Get her up, he ordered one of his men without taking his eyes off the message. Carefully. Hands helped me stand, gentle but firm. Someone draped a jacket over my shoulders. But I couldn't stop staring at Daniel, at the way fury transformed him into something barely human. He crouched beside the carved words, fingers tracing the letters like he was memorizing them. When he stood, his voice was perfectly, terribly calm. Carlisle did this? I nodded, not trusting my voice. He threatened Sophia? Another nod. Daniel pulled out his phone, pressed a single number. When someone answered, he said 3 words, burn it down. Daniel, I started, but he cut me off with a look. They came into my city. Threatened what's under my protection. Killed a civilian to send a message. His jaw worked. That requires an answer. What kind of answer? He turned to me fully then, and the man I saw wasn't the one who gently removed Sophia's braces. This was the Mafia boss, the killer, the legend that made grown men check over their shoulders. The kind that ensures no one ever touches you or your sister again. He moved closer, and I should have been afraid, but all I felt was savage relief. The kind written in blood and bodies. The kind that makes people remember why my name is whispered like a curse. They'll come after you, I whispered. Good. His smile was a razor. Let them come. Let Carlyle send every man he has. Let Vitali crawl out of whatever hole he's hiding in. I want them to know exactly who they're dealing with. Why? The question burst out of me. Why do this? Why risk a war over us? Daniel's hand cupped my face, thumb brushing away blood I hadn't realized was there. His eyes held mine, dark and infinite and burning with something I didn't dare name. Because I'm done losing people I could have saved, he said quietly. Because your sister deserves to walk. Because he stopped, jaw tightening. Because you're mine to protect now. And I don't fail twice. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then back at me. Sophia's secure at my estate. You're going there now, and you're not leaving until this is finished. It wasn't a request. My men will handle the body, the scene, the police if necessary. And you? His smile turned predatory. I'm going hunting. Daniel didn't let me go to the estate alone. He drove himself, dismissing his men with a curt gesture that brooked no argument. The car, a sleek black Audi that probably cost more than I'd earn in 5 years, sliced through the city streets in tense silence. I sat rigid in the passenger seat, still wearing someone else's jacket, still tasting copper and fear. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. She's safe, Daniel said quietly, the first words he'd spoken since we left the warehouse. I have 4 men stationed at the house, 2 inside Sophia's room. No one gets through. You can't know that. My voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. You didn't think they'd find the warehouse either. His knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. That's on me. I should have moved faster, should have anticipated. It's not your fault. The words surprised me. This started long before you knew we existed. But I know now. He took a corner too fast, the engine growling. That makes it my responsibility. We fell silent again. The city blurred past, lights and shadows, life continuing on while mine splintered apart. Every block felt like a lifetime. Every red light an eternity where Carlyle's men could reach Sophia before we did. Tell me about her, Daniel said suddenly. What? Your sister. Tell me about Sophia. Not the paralysis, not the braces. Her. The request caught me off guard. I glanced at him, but his eyes stayed fixed on the road, jaw tight with barely contained violence. She loves strawberries, I heard myself say. But only the really ripe ones. She can tell by smell which ones are sweet and which will be sour. A fragile smile tugged at my mouth. She wants to be a veterinarian when she grows up. Says animals need doctors too, and she knows what it's like to hurt. Daniel's expression flickered. She reads above her grade level. Makes up stories about the birds she watches through the window, gives them names and personalities and elaborate backstories. My voice cracked. She never complains. Not about the pain, not about the wheelchair, not about living in a 1-bedroom apartment where she sleeps on a pull-out couch. She just keeps going, keeps smiling, keeps believing things will get better. She has you, Daniel said softly. That's why she believes. I'm not enough. I've never been enough. You're everything. The fierce conviction in his voice made me turn fully to look at him. You kept her alive. Kept her hoping. Built her a future from nothing. That's not enough, Elena. That's everything. The words settled into my chest, warm and foreign and dangerously close to absolution. We pulled through the gates of the Moretti estate, and the house loomed before us, all marble and security and wealth that could crush people like me without notice. A different kind of cage, I thought. A gilded one, but a cage nonetheless. Daniel parked in front, but didn't immediately get out. He sat there, hands still gripping the wheel, and I could feel the war happening inside him. Her name was Isabella, he said finally. I went still. My sister. She was 8 years younger than me. Had this laugh that sounded like music, made everyone around her smile even when they didn't want to. His voice was distant, lost in memory. She got sick when I was 25. Leukemia. The doctors said she needed aggressive treatment, constant care, the best specialists. His hands flexed on the wheel. But I was building an empire. Consolidating power, eliminating rivals, proving I was worthy of the Moretti name. Every day was a war, every decision life or death. I told myself I was doing it for the family, for her future. He laughed, bitter and broken. I was so consumed with being powerful enough to protect everyone that I didn't see I was losing the one person who actually mattered. Daniel. She died in a hospital bed while I was overseas handling a deal. They couldn't reach me in time. By the time I got back, he stopped jaw working. She was already gone. 17 years old. And I wasn't there. The pain in his voice was devastating. I reached out without thinking, my hand covering his on the wheel. It wasn't your fault, I said. Wasn't it? He turned to look at me finally, and his eyes were wells of ancient grief. I chose power over presence. I chose the empire over her. And she paid the price for my ambition. You were trying to protect your family. I was trying to be a god. His hand turned under mine, fingers lacing with mine in a grip that felt like drowning and salvation at once. And gods don't kneel beside hospital beds. They don't hold hands or tell stories or just be there when it matters. The vulnerability in his confession cracked something open inside me. This wasn't the Mafia boss. This was just a man, broken by loss, haunted by the ghost of a girl he couldn't save. When I saw you with Sophia, he continued, voice rough, when I watched you fight the impossible for her, sacrifice everything, it was like looking at what I should have been. What I failed to be. So this is guilt? I asked carefully. You're helping us to make up for Isabella? No. He brought our joined hands up, pressed them against his chest where his heart hammered beneath expensive fabric. I'm helping you because looking at Sophia reminds me that some things matter more than power. That having an empire means nothing if you don't protect what's precious. That I was given a second chance to not fail someone who deserves better. We're not your redemption, I whispered. Stay low, Daniel commanded, already moving. He grabbed the bed frame and shoved with inhuman strength, repositioning it away from the windows. Don't move, don't look up. I pressed Sophia into the mattress, my body covering hers, feeling her heart race against my chest. She wasn't crying, my brave, stubborn girl, but her fingers dug into my arms hard enough to bruise. The two guards burst into the room, weapons drawn. Sir, we have multiple hostiles breaching the perimeter. East and west sides. How many? Daniel's voice was ice. At least 12. Maybe more. Sophia, one of the guards, started toward us. I'll handle them. Daniel cut him off. He looked at me, and in his eyes I saw the monster emerge fully. Elena, listen to me very carefully. There's a panic room behind the bookshelf in the corner. Take Sophia there now. What about you? I'm ending this. He pulled a gun from somewhere, sleek, black, deadly, and checked the chamber with practiced efficiency. Marco, Luca, escort them. Then get back here. Sir, Marco started. That's an order. Downstairs, something exploded. The entire house shook, plaster dust raining from the ceiling. Sophia whimpered against my chest. Marco moved to the bookshelf, pressing something hidden. It swung open with a mechanical hiss, revealing a steel door and a biometric scanner. Go, Daniel said. Now. But I couldn't move. Couldn't reconcile the man who'd confessed his grief 20 minutes ago with the killer standing before me now, ready to paint his floors with blood. Daniel. I told you. He met my eyes one last time, and the promise in them was absolute. No one hurt Sophia while I breathe. Then he was gone, disappearing into the hallway where gunfire echoed like thunder. "Miss, please." Marco's hand on my shoulder was gentle but firm. "We have to move." I gathered Sophia, light as a bird, trembling like a leaf, and followed Marco toward the panic room. Behind us, Luca took up position at the door, weapon raised. The panic room was exactly what it sounded like: reinforced walls, emergency supplies, monitors showing security feeds throughout the house. Marco ushered us inside, typed a code into the panel. "Lock it behind me," he ordered. "Don't open it for anyone except Mr. Moretti." "Wait," I started, but he was already gone, the door sealing shut with a hydraulic hiss that sounded like a tomb closing. Sophia and I huddled on the floor, and I pulled up the security monitors with shaking hands. The screens showed hell. Men in dark clothing swarmed the grounds, at least 15 that I could count. Daniel's security met them with brutal efficiency, bodies dropping, muzzle flashes lighting the darkness. But there were so many. Too many. One camera showed the main entrance. The front door hung twisted on its hinges, and men poured through like locusts. Another showed the east wing. A firefight in the hallway, Marco and Luca holding the line against impossible odds. And then I found Daniel. He moved through the chaos like death incarnate. No hesitation, no mercy. A man lunged at him. Daniel's gun barked once, twice, and the man crumpled. Another came from behind. Daniel spun, elbow crushing the attacker's throat, weapon firing point blank before the body even hit the ground. He wasn't just defending his home. He was hunting. "Ellie," Sophia whispered against my side. "What's happening?" I couldn't answer. Couldn't tear my eyes from the screen as Daniel cleared room after room, leaving corpses in his wake. This was what I'd avoided seeing all those months working in his house. This was the real Daniel Moretti, not the man who gently removed braces, but the monster who'd built an empire on bones. And he was doing it for us. On screen, 3 men cornered him in the library. I stopped breathing. But Daniel just smiled, cold and terrible, and the screen erupted in violence too fast to follow. When it cleared, all 3 men were down, and Daniel was already moving toward the next threat. "How many?" His voice crackled through the security system, talking to someone off-screen. 7 left. They're regrouping at. Static. Then screaming. Then silence. I pulled Sophia closer, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst. The monitors showed the battle shifting, Daniel's men pushing back, the invaders retreating. But at such cost. Bodies everywhere. Blood on marble floors I'd scrubbed just yesterday. A face appeared on the monitor showing the hallway outside. Pressed against the camera, grinning with bloody teeth. "Come out, little maid," the man crooned. "We know you're in there. We know the cripple's with you. Make this easy." The camera went dark. Sophia's fingernails bit into my arm. "Ellie." "Shoo, baby. We're safe." The door's locked. Daniel's. The panel beside the door beeped. Once. Twice. Someone was trying to override the lock. My blood turned to ice. Elena Davis, a voice called through the steel. Not Daniel's voice. Someone else's, smooth, cultured, dripping with malice. "I believe you have something that belongs to me. A debt unpaid. A lesson unlearned." Carlyle. "Come out," he continued, "and perhaps I'll let the child live. Stay hidden, and I'll make you listen while she screams." The panel beeped faster. He was close to breaking through. I looked at Sophia, my brave, beautiful sister, and knew with absolute certainty that I would die before I let him touch her. So I did the only thing I could. I picked up the emergency phone mounted on the wall and pressed the single button labeled, Moretti. It rang once. "Elena." Daniel's voice was raw, breathless. "Are you?" "He's here," I whispered. "Carlyle. He's breaking through the door." A pause that lasted forever. Then, hold on. I'm coming. The line went dead. The panel beeped one final time, and the lock disengaged with a mechanical click that sounded like the end of the world. The door swung open. Anthony Carlyle stood framed in the doorway, a gun in one hand and 3 years of nightmares made flesh. He was smaller than I remembered, or maybe terror had made him larger in my mind. Mid-50s, silver at his temples, expensive suit marred by blood spatter that wasn't his own. He smiled when he saw us. There you are. He stepped inside, and 2 men followed, hulking shadows with dead eyes. The Davis girls. I've been looking for you for a very long time. I pulled Sophia behind me, putting my body between her and the gun. My voice came out steadier than I felt. You got your revenge. Our father's dead. The debt's paid. Paid. Carlyle laughed, cold and cutting. Your father stole from me. Embarrassed me in front of my associates. Made me look weak. He moved closer, and I backed up until we hit the wall. His death was just the beginning. The real payment is watching his daughters suffer. Watching you realize that defiance has consequences that echo through generations. She's 9 years old, I choked out. She's a child. She has nothing to do with. She's leverage. He raised the gun, pointing it directly at Sophia's head. And you're going to watch her die the way I watched your father beg. Sophia's hand found mine, squeezing tight. No tears. No pleading. Just acceptance that broke my heart into fragments. I love you, Ellie, she whispered. No, the word ripped from my throat. Please, take me instead. Kill me. Do whatever you want, just let her. Elena Davis offering herself for her sister. How touching. Carlyle's finger moved to the trigger. But you see, that's not how this works. You need to live. You need to carry this. You need to. The wall behind him exploded. Not the door, the wall itself. Drywall and wood disintegrated as Daniel Moretti crashed through it like a force of nature, tackling Carlyle before he could pivot. The gun discharged, deafening in the enclosed space, but the bullet went wide, embedding in the ceiling. They hit the ground in a tangle of violence. Daniel's fist connected with Carlyle's face once, twice, bone crunching under knuckles. But one of the guards recovered, raising his weapon toward Daniel's exposed back. No. I screamed. Daniel rolled, using Carlyle's body as a shield. The guard hesitated, just a second, just long enough. Daniel's gun came up, and the guard dropped with a hole in his forehead. The second guard lunged for Sophia. Everything slowed. I saw his hand reaching, saw his cold calculation that a hostage would end this. Saw him grab for my sister's arm while Daniel was still tangled with Carlyle. I threw myself forward, but I was too slow. Too human. Too powerless. The guard's fingers closed around Sophia's wrist, yanking her from my grasp. She cried out, not in fear, but in pain as her paralyzed legs twisted wrong. Got her, the guard shouted. Stand down or the girl. Daniel's gun barked. The guard's head snapped back, a red mist where his skull had been. He dropped like his strings were cut, and Sophia fell with him. I caught her. Barely. We collapsed together, her small body shaking in my arms, both of us covered in someone else's blood and brain matter. Don't look, baby. Don't look. I pressed her face into my shoulder, shielding her eyes from the horror. Behind us, Daniel and Carlyle struggled. Carlyle had found his gun, was bringing it up despite the blood pouring from his broken nose. Daniel's hand shot out, catching Carlyle's wrist, the weapon aimed at the ceiling. You should have stayed dead, Carlyle snarled. Should have let Vitali finish you years ago. Probably. Daniel's voice was cold. But then who would kill you? He twisted, and the gun's angle changed. Pointed down instead of up. Carlyle's eyes widened with the terrible understanding of his own mortality. For Isabella, Daniel said quietly. For every person you've destroyed. For thinking you could touch what's mine. He pulled the trigger. The sound echoed in the small space, final and absolute. Carlyle's body went limp, and Daniel shoved it aside like garbage. For a moment, one crystalline, terrible moment, silence fell. Then Daniel was moving, crossing the space to where I held Sophia. He dropped to his knees beside us, and his hands, those hands that had just killed 3 men, reached out with infinite gentleness. "Let me see," he said. "Let me see if she's hurt." I loosened my grip, and Daniel's fingers carefully examined Sophia's legs, her arms, her tear-streaked face. Blood soaked all of us, but none of it was hers. The realization made something in my chest unlock. "Not hurt," he murmured, more to himself than us. "Not hurt. Safe. She's safe." Sophia stared at him with huge, solemn eyes. "You saved me. Always." His voice cracked on the word. "I'll always save you." His hand moved to her hair, brushing it back from her forehead with such tenderness that tears finally spilled down my cheeks. This man, this killer, this monster, this broken, desperate man, cradled my sister's face like she was made of starlight. "No one will ever touch you again," he vowed, and the ferocity in his voice made it gospel. "Not while I breathe. Not while I have power. Not while I exist." Sophia's small hand came up, touching the side of his face where blood, Carlyle's blood, painted his jaw. She didn't flinch. Didn't recoil. "Does this mean," she asked, voice trembling but hopeful, "that I can keep practicing? With the new braces?" Daniel's composure shattered. He made a sound, half laugh, half sob, and pulled both of us into his arms. Me and Sophia, held against his chest while his heart hammered beneath silk and Kevlar and violence. "Yes," he whispered into her hair. "God, yes. You can practice every day. I'll build you a proper therapy room. Hire the best specialists. Whatever you need. Whatever it takes. Even if I never walk?" Sophia asked. "Even if the doctors are right and I'm always like this?" Daniel pulled back, and the look he gave her was so full of raw emotion that I had to look away. "Even then," he said, "you could stay in that wheelchair forever, and you'd still be the bravest person I've ever met. The surgery, the braces, the therapy, that's not about making you acceptable or whole. You already are. It's about giving you choices. Options. The freedom to try." Sophia's tears came then, silent and steady. "No one's ever said that before." "Then everyone else is an idiot." He wiped her cheeks with his thumbs, smearing blood but somehow making it tender. "You're perfect, Sophia. Exactly as you are." She threw her arms around his neck, and this man, this Mafia boss who just killed 3 men without hesitation, held my 9-year-old sister like she was the most precious thing in the world. And I realized with terrifying clarity that she was. To him. To me. To both of us. Marco appeared in the doorway, weapons still drawn. "Sir, the house is secure. We have casualties but," he stopped, taking in the scene. "The bodies. The blood." Daniel kneeling with Sophia in his arms. "Get Dr. Chen on the phone," Daniel ordered without releasing Sophia. "I want her here within the hour to examine Sophia. And get cleaning crews for," he gestured vaguely at the carnage. "Everything." "Yes, sir." Marco disappeared. Daniel finally met my eyes over Sophia's head, and what I saw there stole my breath. Not the monster. Not the killer. Just a man who'd found something worth protecting more than his empire. Who'd chosen love over vengeance, even while drowning in both. "Thank you," I whispered. "Don't." His jaw tightened. "Don't thank me for doing what I should have done the moment I saw you in that warehouse. For being what I should have been for Isabella. You're not doing this for her memory," I said softly. You're doing it because you want to. Because you care. Something flickered in his expression, vulnerability, hope, fear all tangled together. Is that so wrong? He asked. To care. I shifted closer, my hand finding his where it rested on Sophia's back. No. It's not wrong at all. Sophia pulled back, looking between us with the knowing expression of children who see more than adults give them credit for. Are you gonna kiss? She asked bluntly. Sophia. I gasped, heat flooding my face. But Daniel laughed, real laughter, surprised and genuine. Not right now, Piccola. First, we make sure you're okay. Then we clean up this mess. Then. He met my eyes, and the promise in them made my heart stutter. Then we see what happens next. Okay, Sophia said, satisfied. She settled back against Daniel's chest, exhausted by fear and adrenaline. But for the record, I think you should. Ellie needs someone to take care of her too. I'll keep that in mind, Daniel said solemnly. And there in a panic room splattered with blood, holding my sister while this dangerous, broken, surprisingly gentle man held us both, I felt something I hadn't experienced in 3 years. Safety. Not the absence of danger. Daniel's world would always be dangerous. But the certainty that we wouldn't face it alone. That someone strong enough to weather the storms would stand beside us. That maybe, just maybe, we'd found our way home. 6 weeks later, sunlight poured through the windows of what used to be Daniel's private study and was now Sophia's therapy room. Gone were the mahogany bookshelves and leather furniture. In their place, medical-grade parallel bars, foam mats in cheerful colors, equipment I couldn't have dreamed of affording. Dr. Chun had designed the space herself, transforming cold efficiency into something warm and hopeful. Ready? I asked, my hands hovering near Sophia's waist. She stood between the parallel bars, wearing the custom braces Daniel had imported from Milan. They were beautiful in a way the old ones never were, sleek carbon fiber and precision engineering, fitted so perfectly they looked like they belonged to her body. The surgeon in Rome had been cautiously optimistic after reviewing her scans. The nerves weren't as damaged as the first doctors thought. With therapy, dedication, and time. Hope. That dangerous, beautiful word. I'm ready, Sophia said, and her confidence had grown alongside her strength these past weeks. No more hiding in warehouses. No more scraping by on nothing. Daniel had hired a private tutor so Sophia could study from home, a kind woman named Mrs. Abernathy who treated her like any other gifted student rather than a tragedy to pity. Physical therapy every morning with Dr. Chun. Occupational therapy in the afternoons. A life built around possibility instead of survival. Remember what Dr. Chun said, I coached, falling into our rhythm. Small steps. Distribute your weight. Let the braces do the work. Sophia's jaw set with determination. Her hands gripped the bars, knuckles white. She lifted her right foot, barely an inch, but she lifted it, and shifted forward. 1 step. My heart lodged in my throat. She paused, breathing hard, then lifted the left. Another step. Then another. Each one more steady than the last, muscle memory and metal working in harmony. Ellie, look. Her voice cracked with wonder. I'm doing it. I'm really doing it. You're doing it, I breathed, tears streaming freely down my face. Oh baby, you're walking. 4 steps. 5. 6. Each one a small miracle that Dr. Chun said shouldn't be possible this soon. But Sophia had always been exceptional at defying expectations. On the 7th step, her leg buckled slightly. I caught her weight, steadying her, and she laughed, pure, brilliant, uncontained joy that filled every corner of the room. Again, she demanded immediately. I want to go again. I can do more. Sophia Davis, you will take a break, Dr. Chen's voice called from the doorway. She'd been monitoring from the observation window, giving us space but staying close. We talked about pacing yourself. But nothing. Water break. Then we do stretches. Dr. Chen's firm expression softened. You did beautifully. 7 steps in the second week with the new braces? That's remarkable progress. Sophia practically glowed under the praise. I helped her to the padded bench along the wall, and she sipped water while chattering about how the braces felt different today, how she thought she could feel her muscles engaging, how maybe she'd be ready for the walker soon. I listened and smiled and tried to believe this was real. That we were truly here, truly safe, truly beyond the shadows that had chased us for so long. The door opened, and Daniel stepped inside. He'd been in meetings all morning, the kind of business I didn't ask about and he didn't volunteer. But he always came afterward, still wearing his suit and that particular tension that said he'd been dealing with his other world. The dangerous one. The one that paid for carbon fiber braces and private tutors and this second chance. How'd she do? He asked, his eyes finding Sophia first, cataloging that she was whole and happy. 7 steps. Sophia announced proudly. Dr. Chen said it's remarkable. Something in Daniel's expression cracked open, that vulnerability he only showed here in this room with us. 7 steps. That's my girl. He crossed to her, and she reached up automatically. He lifted her as easily as breathing, settling her against his hip like they'd been doing this for years instead of weeks. Tell me everything, he said. And she did. Sophia chattered about each step, the way her weight distributed, how the right brace needed a minor adjustment but the left was perfect. Daniel listened with the same intense focus he brought to his business dealings, asking questions, praising her effort. Somewhere in the past 6 weeks, this had become normal. Daniel Moretti, Mafia boss, killer, legend, playing father to a 9-year-old girl who'd stolen his carefully guarded heart. Dr. Chan excused herself tactfully, and suddenly it was just the 3 of us in the sunlit room. Daniel set Sophia back on the bench and knelt before her, eye level. I'm proud of you, Piccola. Not just for the steps. For working hard. For being brave. For being you. Sophia beamed. Then with the blunt honesty of children, are you gonna marry Ellie? I choked on air. Sophia. What? She looked genuinely confused. You said people who love each other get married. And you love Daniel, and he loves you so. That's not, we haven't, I floundered, face burning. Daniel's hand found mine, lacing our fingers together with casual certainty. Would you like that? He asked Sophia. If Elena and I got married? Obviously, Sophia said, as if this was the most basic question in the world. Then we'd be a real family. And you could adopt me, and I'd have a dad again, and we'd all live together forever. The casual way she said it, like permanence was possible, like family could be chosen, made my throat tight. Sophia, I managed, that's not how things work. People don't just. Why not? Daniel's eyes met mine, dark and steady and absolutely serious. Why can't that be how it works? My heart stopped. Daniel. I know it's fast. I know my world is dangerous. I know he stopped jaw working. I know I'm not the safe choice. But I'm the choice that will protect you both with everything I have. The choice that will wake up every morning grateful you're alive. The choice that will build you whatever future you want. Even if that future doesn't include you? I whispered. Pain flickered across his face. Even then. Your happiness, both of you, matters more than what I want. And what do you want? He stood, pulling me up with him, close enough that I could feel his heart beating. I want to watch Sophia take her first real steps without braces. I want to see her graduate high school, go to veterinary school, live the life she deserves. I want, his free hand came up, cupping my face. I want to wake up next to you every morning. Want to come home to you every night. Want to build something real that isn't based on fear or power or blood. That's not your world, I said, even as I leaned into his touch. No. But it could be. For you, I'd make it that. His thumb brushed my cheekbone. I'm not asking you to decide today. I'm just asking you to consider that maybe we've all found what we've been looking for. Behind us, Sophia made an exaggerated gagging sound. Are you gonna kiss now? Because if so, I'm gonna cover my eyes, but you should definitely kiss. Daniel laughed, surprised and genuine. Permission granted? Oh my God, I muttered. But I was smiling. Couldn't help it. He leaned down, and I met him halfway. The kiss was soft, tentative, tasting of possibility and promise. Nothing like the violence he was capable of. Everything like the gentleness he'd shown Sophia. When we pulled apart, Sophia was peeking through her fingers. Okay, that was pretty good, she admitted. Can we practice walking again now? And just like that, the moment passed. Back to therapy, to progress, to the steady work of building a future. But as Daniel helped Sophia back to the parallel bars, as I watched him steady her with infinite patience, I realized something fundamental had shifted. I wasn't the maid anymore. Wasn't the girl scrubbing floors and hiding secrets. I was Elena Davis, sister, survivor, and maybe, just maybe, something more. A woman who'd fought impossible odds and won. Who'd protected what mattered and found unexpected allies in the darkness. A woman carrying both her sister's hope and a dangerous man's heart. Daniel caught my eye across the room as Sophia took another step. In his gaze, promise, dedication, and something that looked suspiciously like love. The future was uncertain. His world would always have shadows. But standing here in this sunlit room, watching my sister walk and this complicated man smile, I thought maybe we'd be okay. Maybe we'd be more than okay. Maybe we'd found our way home after all. Sophia took another step, then another, her laughter echoing off the walls. And for the first time in 3 years, I let myself believe in happy endings. Not the fairy tale kind. The real kind, messy and complicated and built on blood and hope in equal measure.